Welcome to episode 1201 of The Sleeper and the Bust. I am Justin Mason, joined as always on Sundays by Jason Collette. How you doing, my friend?
Doing well, man. It is boring trade deadline, I would say. I am keep looking at it and seeing what's going to happen. And we got a little bit of news last night, which gave us at least a big name to talk about. But otherwise, it seems like it's going to be kind of quiet. How are you?
I don't know. I don't think it's been super quiet. I mean, we're still a few days away from the deadline, and we've already had a big name. We've had a star traded and then some other big names. Definitely don't want to
we're less than 48 hours away, though, right?
I know, but it always happens the day of, and we've already had a star like Max Scherzer get dealt. I think you are just envious of the players that are moving.
Hey, I don't know what you're talking about. I got Erasmo Ramirez on my team now. I mean, come on.
Go.
Oh wait, it's
what
not
more could you ask for?
Anymore. Yeah, maybe. After 17-4 beatdown last night, I would just like to see. I can't wait for July to be over. This 6-16 month is the second worst in franchise history.
Wow!
It feels. It's couldn't come at a better time. So yeah, and then my AL Labor team is trying to hold on to first and losing Taylor Ward. F you, Alek Manoah. Thanks so much for that plunking of the face of Ward, and then Jordan Romano's back going out. So yeah, it's been a rough weekend. Just say that.
Yeah, well, hopefully we can invigorate your teams. I'm going to say it at the top. This is a boring week of FAAB. I think there's, obviously next week is going to be a lot more interesting because we're going to have a bunch of names that were affected by the trade deadline. We've got a few on the rundown that could likely be impacted by the trade deadline, but we're just kind of guessing a little bit. That being said, we also have some trades to talk about. So we'll jump in with those trades first. Let's start with Lance Lynn and Joe Kelly heading to the Dodgers in a deal. Obviously, Joe Kelly, not really fantasy relevant outside of like the deepest of deepest leagues. But Lance Lynn has been, I think, statistically the worst starting pitcher in Major League Baseball this year. But he's formerly a top 25, top 30 starting pitcher. He's moving to a fantastic organization in the Dodgers where he'll at least get a ton of run support. Do you think that the Dodgers can fix Lance Lynn?
Yes, I was actually super excited about this acquisition. I think we talked about him last week on my labor squad. You can't bench him, so you have to carry him or cut him. And this is why I didn't want to cut him yet. I wanted to see where he was going to land. This is one of the best places he could have landed. I would say, so that's where I was really curious to see how it's going to work. Mike Petriello had a really nice article on MLB.com talking about 5 names that would be interesting in trade, and both Kelly and Lynn were were 2 of the 5 that were named in the article about what could possibly go well there. So I was intrigued after reading the article, hopeful that he would land somewhere good. And now to me, it's like any thoughts I had about dropping Lynn, and this is despite falling 3 points in ERA this week alone in the standings. I'm keeping Lynn. I'm going to ride him out the rest of the way. If you have been holding Lance Lynn, this is the best possible landing situation. There's a good chance he's sitting out there on the free agent pile in some of your other leagues, because despite the strikeouts, he absolutely has been killing ratios. This would be your chance. If you're hurting for strikeouts, I think we even said this last week, if you're hurting for strikeouts, go pull the rest of season projections up right now. I want to say Lance Lynn is top 10 for strikeouts, for pitcher WAR. Go look at that. If you listen to me on the Baseball HQ podcast, baseball radio podcast with Patrick Davitt Friday, Lance Lynn was and we recorded that Wednesday, by the way, before the trade even happened. He was the pitcher that I said I would like to pick up the rest of the way, because people have already, the damage has been avoided and you get to enjoy what's left of the season out of him, which I feel will be much better than what we've seen from him. So I actually like this, and I think it moves the fantasy needle, if you will.
Yeah, right now the bat has Lance Lynn projected for the 15th most strikeouts rest of the way. but also tied for the most wins rest of the way. So I don't know if the Dodgers can be able to fix him, but you're at least going to get strikeouts. You're going to get wins pitching for this Dodgers squad. I've still got Lance Lynn on a number of spots. I'm hoping that they can fix him, even though I never want to see my my Giants get beaten by a Dodgers team. So, I think he's a guy that, and he lines up this week versus Oakland. So you couldn't ask for a better first start out the gate.
Well, let's be real though. You look back at Lance Lynn's game log this year. It's like there have been times where you're like, man, look at this matchup. This is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And he will go out there and like just laugh in your face and do the exact opposite. And then you look at some other matchups and you're like, man, there's no way this is going to work out well for him. And then he goes out and strikes out 11 Toronto Blue Jays on July 6th and 16. Now, I remember that game, this 16 Seattle Mariners, and A, the Mariners weren't hitting well, and B, the zone was ridiculously friendly in that game. But then he's had some other games where it's like, oh, come on. Let's go back to May 10th when he allowed 7 earned runs and 11 base runners against Kansas City, who was hitting about $150 during that time. Mm-hmm. So he is not immune to absolute stink bombs as we've seen it all year. But then every now and then he comes out with that game like, oh, yeah, you could be good. So who knows? Let's hope that he hits the ground running out of Oakland. It's a good start. But go back and look how Oakland's been doing well offensively. Yeah, this weekend they're in Colorado, and it certainly has helped. But they are not the same pushover offense that they were early in the season.
Yeah, no, I agree. Next guy on the docket is Kendall Graveman, traded to the Houston Astros. This is on the back of Reynaldo Lopez getting traded in the Giolito deal to the Angels. Obviously, Graveman is not going to close in Houston, so he's going to lose pretty much all of his fantasy value. The question becomes, who does close in Chicago now that Graveman and Reynaldo Lopez are both gone, and do you really care?
I was kind of having this conversation with somebody in my league yesterday. He's like, "Ooh, I picked up this guy." I'm like, maybe he gets 5 saves the rest of the season. But honestly, if we're just going to go by pure stuff, the line starts behind Gregory Santos. I don't know how anybody else gets that option. You watch him pitch, and he's been the best guy in that bullpen by quite a bit. When you watch him pitch, I'm just bummed because I had him earlier in the season and cut him when nothing was happening for him. So he got the first save out of the gate, saved the game, and the hold went to Tanner Banks in that particular outing. And then yesterday, a hold went to Jesse Schultens. The White Sox are going to be terrible. Treat them as you were treating Oakland the early part of the season. Santos may get 5 saves, and he may not even pitch around those other outings where he's not getting that work. So I care if it's a mono league and I'm hurting and it's close in saves. Other than that, I don't really care because he's going to get half the saves of a regular club, if that, because obviously the White Sox have already dealt away a few of their guys and they may not be done.
Yeah. I think Santos is kind of the next guy up. And I do think the White Sox are going to trade a number of other relievers. That'll make it even more barren around Santos. So if you're looking for saves, Santos is a guy. The question becomes, like you said, does he get 5 saves the rest of the way? And is that impactful for you? So I think
I will tell you, they don't have any options in AAA getting ready to come up. So as somebody who goes to a bunch of Charlotte games, it is not a good roster. They don't have anybody to call up.
Yep. Max Scherzer was the big name traded yesterday. It was a little weird, right? I mean, at first there was the announcement, hey, he's being traded to the Rangers, and then the trade was on hold because apparently they hadn't discussed him waiving his no trade trade clause in his contract. But it eventually got done. Traded for the younger brother of Acuna. What are your thoughts on Scherzer heading to Texas? He's kind of been up and down this season.
Yeah, my thoughts are Texas needed to do this with the news about Nadia Valdi and the I'm using air quotes for y'all listening, the good elbow pain that he's going through that's pushed back his start. I mean, he may not start until this coming Friday, but they keep pushing his back. They haven't said that he's hitting the IL but they're saying the pain's in a good part of his elbow. I didn't realize there was a good part of your elbow to have pain in as a pitcher, but here we are. So they had to kind of make that move to do that. And they've had some inconsistency with their pitching staff. I mean, offensively, they literally haven't had a problem much of the season. I mean, they put a base runner on, they're pretty much driving him in, although that may be tested with Jonah Heim hitting the IL, which we'll talk about in a minute. Because John Gray had a nice start to the season, but then he's been up and down. Andrew Heaney was on a roll, then he's been up and down. Dane Dunning was on a really nice start, then he's been up and down. Martin Perez has been mostly down. They needed this. They had to get somebody in. So why not add another guy who's been up and down all season to a rotation that has mostly been up and down all season? So it's, that's really where it sits. You need it. If you were a mono league team holding money for FAAB, this is probably going to be the biggest name that comes over. I'm not imagining another one jumping over now that, the Angels, because we're talking NL League folks too. The Angels have taken Ohtani off the market, different types of things, but this may be the biggest pitching name that comes over. So it could be people throwing what they have left at this and hoping that Scherzer uncovers a fountain of youth and maybe being in a competitive situation again allows him to take that step forward that he was not taking in consecutive starts with the Mets.
Yeah, I think my big concern is that he's moving from a park in New York that was the 20th best or 20th worst for home runs this year, which is what he has struggled with, has been homers, especially recently. He's given up 10 home runs in the month of July.
Yeah.
And he's moving to Texas that is playing a lot better for power, right? It's the 12th best park for home runs, or 12, or I guess the 12th, 12th best. Yeah,
well, I'm sure it's been closed for a while, but yeah, it's the park change is definitely a concern. I haven't looked to see what Texas's schedule is the rest of the way on this. So, like I said, you have to hope that Scherzer can have a relocation and be like, okay, cool, I'm in a better mindset, because somebody like him, who definitely has that dog in him, probably has not enjoyed where he has been the last, this season has not worked out as he expected. And so now getting to hop right into a pennant race, a very contentious race with the Astros now fully back and loaded with their lineup. We're getting Alvarez and Altuve back this week. It's going to be a dogfight the rest of the way in the AL West.
Yeah, he lines up against the White Sox at home for his first start. So pretty decent first start to be coming into Texas.
Hey, congrats to Tim Anderson on his first home run this year.
Yeah, right. We've been waiting. Unfortunately, I think for anybody who's still rostering Tim Anderson, there's no way he was in your lineup. Like
one home run. It's sad. The lower half, it's a reminder when you have a lower half injury and it's not right, how it can just sap your power.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. Moving away from trades, moving on to just regular news. Trevor Story could return next week. He's going to be a big pickup in FAAB where he's still available. He'll be available in pretty much every single NFBC league next weekend. But if you were thinking about picking him up for a stash, knowing that he could potentially be back next week, are you excited about a potential Trevor Story return?
Not yet. I even wrote this up at the Collette Calls column this week at RotoWire, talking about how guys perform when they come back and looking at we call it days delayed. So often, these guys will hit the 10-day IL. I call it days delayed, looking at different types of injuries and how long it took that player to be activated past when they were first eligible to come off the IL. And on the whole, the average has been 15 days. For all the injuries that have happened this year, on the average, it's been 15 days past the first day eligible returning. The elbow injury, honestly, there wasn't that many to look at to say, oh, yeah, that. But then we look at Bryce Harper. I mean, Bryce Harper is probably the best case that we have right now. And Bryce Harper, with his Tommy John and all the time he missed, and the power, the funny moment of the broadcast this week was when the Orioles were saying it's the same looking violent swing, but it hasn't been the same contact. And he literally homers on the next pitch. But that said, it obviously has not been the same Bryce Harper. And we're talking about a guy here in Trevor Story that has been out of action for 4+ months, and he's coming in. So, the overall theme of the article I wrote at Collette Calls this week is that we often fall into the trap of great guy, before he got hurt is coming back, so he's going to pick up right where he left off. Well, Trevor Story wasn't exactly setting the world on fire when he left. When he got hurt too. So I'm not excited yet. Now, maybe he comes back and proves me wrong, but I would just hope folks level their expectations of a guy missing this much time coming back into it. I mean, just if you're a Red Sox fan or whatever, look at Adam Duvall. Adam Duvall was gone 2 months. Actually, Adam Duvall came back right on time from his fractured wrist. And Adam Duvall was crushing the ball before he got hurt. And then, for the most part, he has not done that since coming back from his injury.
Yeah, and Story has hit well in his minor league rehab assignment.
It's Worcester.
Yeah, and it's also only been 6 games. Like it's 2 home runs in 6 games. So it's half at Worcester and then half at what's their AA?
New Hampshire.
Yeah, maybe. So, but he's got a home run in each spot, and it's good to see that he's hitting the ball well, as opposed to I'd be much more concerned if he hadn't hit any home runs, if he was hitting 175. But I'm also not like getting overly excited about the fact that he's hitting well down there necessarily. For me, I think I'm more excited for him as a potential stolen base guy, right? Like we know that he can steal bases still. I'm still a little worried to see what the batting average might look like, if the power is going to be fully there coming off of the injury. But if I need stolen bases, I think he's one of those guys that could be kind of a sneaky stolen base guy down the stretch and playing every day high up in that Boston lineup. So I would stash him if I could. Unfortunately, in all the leagues where I'm able to stash him, I have not been able to do that because of rules.
Yeah, well, question with him. I have not seen the news. Is he going to be able to play shortstop on his way back, or is he moving to second base? I mean, obviously Boston has had a ton of problems at second base. They've been playing Justin Turner there recently because between all the injuries that they've had, they have not been able to properly cover the position. But is Story coming back? Because Sheeta's been playing a lot of DH, and so where are they going to move? What are they going to do there? Do you know?
I mean, I'm watching a video of him playing shortstop right now. So, from down in the minor leagues. So my assumption is that he will be able to play shortstop, but I know the original talk when he was coming back, or when he was about to start his rehab assignment, was that there was a chance that they would activate him before he was even able to play the field, and he would just DH. So my guess is he splits time between second base or shortstop, probably shortstop, and DH. But I mean, I don't think you're activating him and then sitting him 2 or 3 days a week. I think he's playing every day.
They need an insurance plan. You changed, not the insurance plan. Maybe they go out and get your boy Paul DeYoung and look for that. They need a shortstop insurance plan.
I'd be really surprised if the Red Sox added to this team really at all.
AL East is kind of like settling down where people have got options. I mean, I think they traded Kike Hernandez just because they realized he wasn't the answer at shortstop, and they were kind of crowded in the outfield. So they went out and did what they did there, but they need something. They need kind of an insurance policy.
Hey, get Tim Anderson. There you go. There's your answer. The next piece of news is Taylor Ward went to the IL with facial fracture. He was hit in the face by Alek Manoah because Manoah still can't figure out where the plate is. Or are you holding on to Taylor Ward right now?
So I was watching that game, and I was like, ooh, bases loaded, 1 out, nobody out, and first pitch sinker that just didn't sink. It kind of deflected off the brim of the batting helmet, and then, Ward took it off really the bridge of his nose, but he has multiple facial fractures. So, he is likely going to be on the IL for August, and then you have to worry about how is it going to be when he comes back, and how he's going to be able to handle inside pitches. It's the psychology of it all. We think back to, this didn't appear to be like the time Giancarlo Stanton took the Mike Fiers pitch, but it was pretty bad. That's how how he got hit with it. And it was weird with Manoah. It was like, there were times in this game, and I was watching this because it was the only game on a Saturday afternoon. What the hell, baseball? You've got the Saturday afternoon all to yourself, and this is the only game that was on that was even being played at the time, right? I don't understand what they do on Saturdays. But anyhow, there were times in this game where Manoah looked really good. Slider was good. He was locating, and then it all just fell apart in that final inning, and then culminated by the sinker that ended up off Ward's cheek. So I don't, I have an AL labor rather, and I can put him on the bench. Obviously, I can IL him, but if you're in a league where you're, NFBC style 17 reserves only, I don't know how you can. It really sucks because Ward was starting to play better of late. And this unfortunate timing with it. And I don't know what the Angels will do. If you look at the roster, the immediate, your gut reaction was like, okay, Joe Adell time. Well, no, Joe Adell's still on the IL himself. He went on the IL with an oblique injury just before the All-Star break. And he may not be back from that for another week plus. The good news is when people come back from oblique injuries, hitters this year, they've tended to be on time, and it hasn't had an impact on the performance. That was one of the takeaways from the aforementioned article I wrote. So that's some good news there. But right now, they're calling up Kevin Padlo, and that's just we need a name come up here and do something, please. So I don't know for the next week or so, the Angels, they just made their acquisitions to stay in this pennant race. Or not a pennant race for them for a wild card spot. And I don't know. I guess this is going to keep some more playing time for Trey Cabbage. Michael Stefanik's been getting some pinch hits around the Ohtani cramp issue. But right now, when you look at the way this lineup's going to stack up, man, I don't know if I'm worried about Ohtani only because why the hell would I pitch him? Matt Chapman was definitely on to something the other day when he's yelling when Ohtani hit the home run, and they're like, why the F are we pitching to this guy? Why? And you look at this lineup right now, and it's like, okay, Zach Neto, Ohtani, Mickey Moniak, Mike Moustakas. It's like, I'm just going to pitch around Ohtani as much as I can, and I'll deal with these other guys. Yeah, Moniak's had a great year, but I would still rather face Moniak like 100 days a week over Ohtani. So
yeah.
The Ward injury to me is the trickle down because it's definitely a king in his court situation there in South LA right now with this lineup. And if I'm a contending team, I'm not even dealing with pitching to Ohtani. I just put him on base, let him try to steal a base. That's fine with me.
Yeah, you got to wonder if the Angels will add another outfielder here at the deadline. Especially with Ward being out for a little while. It won't be Cody Bellinger. We just saw come over the wire that the Cubs are not trading away Cody Bellinger at the deadline. I think they might be buyers even at the deadline, which is a weird thing to say, but the Cubs are competing right now. So maybe, hey, Tyler O'Neill, anybody? He might look good in Angels red. So
how about can Eduardo Escobar play the outfield?
I bet he could. I don't know that they necessarily want.
I mean, because I think somebody like Heimer Candelario definitely would make a good fit as a third baseman for them, and then they could move Escobar to the outfield. I say this as somebody who he hasn't played a single game in the outfield this year, and I'm looking at the last time he played some outfield was 2017. So scratch that. Never mind.
Maybe like a Mark Canha deal where it's a guy that you get for fairly cheap. You move Moniak over to center, and that's kind of the way you go about things. But I mean, considering they were willing to give up a fair amount for Giolito, it seems like they want to push all in. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw them go for maybe a bigger piece somewhere. So the question becomes, are they willing to part with more of this farm system in order to improve it? Speaking of injuries to the AL West, Jonah Heim goes on the IL with a wrist injury. You and I were talking about this prior to going live because I have a decision to make in my main event. I've got Jonah Heim. He's been great for me. But, in a league where I don't have IL spots, can I wait the 2 to 3 weeks that he's at least going to be out for with the potential he could be out the rest of the season? Or should I just drop him and move on?
Yeah, that's the issue with this is the injury. When it came out, it's basically like, okay, here's Heim's injury. He has to figure out if he can play through it. If he can't, he has to have surgery. It will end his season. So one would hope or expect that resolution will come to sooner rather than later with that. And so, I would expect coming days, because when you look at what they can do, they've called up Sam Huff, and Sam Huff can hit. Sam Huff proved last year he can't throw anybody out. That's not a strength of Mitch Garver's, and we that's one of the things that Jonah Heim has done really well. I mean, I honestly, from a fantasy perspective, Jonah Heim has done two things extremely well this year. One, he has driven in a ton of runs. He has, look, this is not one of the guys you would have expected in the top 25 of the RBI leaderboard, but he's done it this year. And so that's been one of the things. But the other thing is he has excelled in stealing strikes and making pitches on the fringe become strikes. He has been one of the best guys in baseball in doing that this year. And so then now we have, how is this going to impact that Texas staff that we talked about earlier that's been up and down all year? Now they're going to have the defense is taking a step back behind the plate because Garver and Huff simply aren't the same framers that Jonah Heim has been. So I have larger concerns for the impact to the offense a little bit. It should help Mitch Garver if he can get the bat going with some RBI opportunities, but I'm more worried about how this injury is going to impact this pitching staff, because they have certainly enjoyed what Heim has done behind the plate for them this year. But for you, I'm hoping the answer comes sooner rather than later, because if he decides, look, this is not going to work, they could go out and make another acquisition. Go get Grandal from the White Sox and get some experience behind the plate. Go find another catcher. But if they have to move forward with Garver and Huff, I'm concerned about the overall impact on that pitching staff.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards dropping him this week, just because even if he comes back, is he going to still have the power in the bat that made him kind of valuable this year, right? And is he going to play as regularly as he was, considering the injury? And so I think the right answer is probably to drop him and move on. Unfortunately, like in my scenario, it's a 15-team 2-catcher league, so I'm potentially dropping him for a guy like Connor Wong or Freddie Furman. It's like I don't know that I'm going to get much, but getting anything when you're in a kind of a dogfight in a race, like you've got to kind of do what you got to do. So I think for me, I'm probably going to end up dropping him, but I completely understand people wanting to kind of give it a little bit of wait and see if, hey, maybe a week from now we have a little bit more news. But I think the right answer is drop him, because power is likely going to be sapped anyways.
Yep. It's usually an issue when you're coming back from a wrist injury or anything. It just takes some time. And especially if he's trying to play through pain, have to change your expectations.
Are you picking up Mitch Garver or Sam Huff in leagues where they're available?
Yeah, just because you're looking at a lineup again that produces a lot of runs. And Garver, he has that catcher eligibility, which certainly helps. I would expect him, unless the Rangers make another move, to be the primary catcher for this. And so being in that lineup should help him be an above average producer at the catching position, which, by the way, has been pretty decent this year overall. Compared to what it normally is. But I'm not going out reaching out for Huff unless I'm in a 2-catcher mono league, because he definitely has limitations behind the plate, and the club knows this. And I want to say he was 1 for the season last year in throwing guys out, and that's where it's always been problematic with Huff. There's plenty of offensive upside, but throwing guys out has not been a strength of his. And this year nobody has actually attempted one on him. Garver is 2 of 13 in throwing out base runners. And Jonah Heim was he was 14 of 53 in catching them. So he wasn't setting the world on fire, but that's still a lot better than that. But if I go back and look at 2022 and go back and look at the situation, Sam Huff was 4 of 23 in throwing out runners last year. So that's the situation. And then Mitch Garver was 2 of 10. So we're talking about 2 catchers that have combined to throw out 10 guys in their last 50 attempts. Not great.
Yeah. I think Garver in, 2-catcher, like 12-team leagues, 10-team leagues, makes a lot of sense. Maybe even, I feel like you could get a better catcher in a 1-catcher 15-team league, but Yeah, I think that Garver's going to play a fair amount. Even when he's not catching, he'll probably be DHing. So I think this is a good time to go buy on Garver in most formats.
I want to look to see if pull up a 15-team league, one catcher, and see what's out there. Just so we can try to help people here real quick with that. If I go to, I'm in a 2-catcher league in that. Sorry, I'm thinking GDD was a 2-catcher league. So if I even in a 2-catcher league, in a 15-team 2-catcher league, I can go get Tom Murphy right now, who's been hitting well. I can get Connor Wong, as you said, who's been hitting decently.
Mm-hmm.
I can get Matt Tice, who's been getting more playing time. So this isn't a 15-team 2-catcher league. These are some of the names that's 3 names that are available right there. And if I switch over, I have an 18-team 1-catcher league. And if I look at an 18-team 1-catcher league, which would be close enough to what we're talking about with a 15-team with a 1-catcher, I can look at Danny Jansen, who's been starting to get the power stroke back. Mm-hmm. He's been hitting. Tom Murphy is still there. The other names that we've mentioned, Jake Rogers has been getting more playing time. So you do have options. Like I said, the catching position hasn't been completely terrible this year as it has been most seasons. That said, I'm still not adding Sam Huff.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. All right, next guy we're going to move on into kind of FAAB. Like I said, not as great of a FAAB week as other weeks have been, but there are some interesting names. Marco Luciano called up by the San Francisco Giants. This was an interesting call-up because Brandon Crawford was activated from the IL the following day. So it looks like Luciano is probably going to be kind of more of a fill-in or a super utility kind of guy in the infield. This is a former top prospect that's kind of lost a lot of the hype around him because he's been dealing with kind of recurring back issues in the minor leagues. But the bat speed is fantastic. There is a lot of upside here. Any interest in Marco Luciano?
No, not really. Back trouble says it all for me. It's to me, we're trying to look for fantasy and what's the best skill that he has. Hitting, base hits. But he's going to hit the bottom of the lineup. So that's going to limit how many runs he's going to score. So unless I'm in a deep mono league, no interest.
Yeah, I mean, there is a fair amount of power in this bat, but unfortunately, I just don't know how much he's going to be able to tap into it in San Francisco's park. And like I said, he's going to hit the bottom of the lineup. It looks like he is projected to kind of be, a pretty regular second baseman there in San Francisco. But they've also got a lot of other options on this team, including Wilmer Flores and Casey Schmidt. Schmidt's a very, very good defender. Flores has been really hot as of late. So I just think that the playing time probably going to be a little bit too sporadic for him to get involved a ton in terms of plate appearances. And so while Luciano has kind of a big name from his previous prospect pedigree, I think this is more about next year for him. I think he's going to be probably every day in the lineup, maybe even a shortstop, considering this is the last year of Brandon Crawford's deal. So, but for this year, I just don't know that Luciano. I know he's going to be a popular pickup. I just don't think he's that impactful for 2023. What about Matt Wallner, who is, has been playing a little bit in Minnesota? Has got 4 home runs in the year, hit 254. Any interest in Matt Wallner?
Yeah, he can hit. He's got some power. The issue I have is once Buxton comes off the IL, what's the playing time going to look like? So at least for this week, speculative bid on Matt Wallner would be appropriate, but it will be a week-by-week situation. But I've watched a couple of at-bats, and he's not overmatched. Definitely has the pop. Minnesota's had a lot of guys like this before. I think back to still waiting for Trevor Larnach to break out, that type of situation. But I would take a bid on Wallner this week without even looking at what the schedule is like for them this week. I have not looked at their schedule.
They're at St. Louis and then at Arizona. Now, currently projected to go up against Jordan Montgomery, who's probably going to be traded.
He won't be there.
Jack Flaherty, who's probably going to be traded. And Miles Mikolas, it'll be his first start off of suspension. And then they go to Arizona, Merrill Kelly, who will be there, Ryan Nelson, who will be there, and Zach Allen, who will be there. So it is not a terrible schedule for him to potentially, take advantage of, because I mean, who's St. Louis even going to be throwing? Like Matthew Liberatore? I don't even know like what they're on. Dakota Hudson, I think, is back at this point. So like those are probably the guys that fill in once they do trade Montgomery and Flaherty. So I think it's a pretty good setup for Wallner to get some playing time.
It's a 6-game week.
And Buxton is already back. So did they send Wallner down? Here's a question. I think they
No,
did.
Wallner played just yesterday. He hit 9th yesterday.
Oh, there he is. So
I missed the news Buxton came back because he had been out on maternity leave.
Buxton's only DHing.
Yeah.
So I think Wallner's going to continue to play, hit in the middle lineup. I mean, there's batting average is probably not going to be great for Wallner, but if you need pop, and a lot of us in leagues do need pop, Wallner is available, and in a lot of leagues, I think he's the guy.
And he should play every day too. I mean, you look at the lineup; they've been platooning Edward Julian. They've obviously platooning Max Kepler and Joey Gallo, and so that's when Kyle Farmer, Donovan Solano, and Willie Castro were getting into the lineup. But Wallner's been out there playing every day. Fifth, fourth, sixth, seventh, and he's played right and left field in 3 of the past 4 days around the DHing time. So they have made the room for him. And Willie Castro has been out there in the lineup every single day, which he should be. Mr. 25 plus surprising steals with that in that situation. So Wallner's got a 6-game week, and the front half of that schedule is rather nice with it could be 2 starters to be named later if both Flaherty and Montgomery are out of the picture. So I would take this week with Matt Wallner and see how it plays out overall.
Yeah, I agree. Another guy who is back up is Oscar Gonzalez. Remember when people were really excited about him coming into the season before he had just an atrocious time at the major league level in 80 plate appearances, hitting 205 with only 1 home run. He's going to be back. It looks like he's going to be playing fairly regularly. Any interest in Oscar Gonzalez?
Oh man, no. Where is it coming? I mean, it's still Cleveland. I'm just trying to think, why is he up? And he's played 2 of the 4 games since he's been up, hit 6th or 7th. It could be lightning in a bottle situation. It's not like anything else. I mean, he's been playing the games that Miles Straw has not. So the 2 games that Gonzalez has been in, Miles Straw has sat, and then that has shifted. I'm just trying to look at that has shifted Will Brennan to center field in those particular matchups. So that's what they've been trying to get that particular situation. I mean, this is still a bad offense. It's still bad, but if they've got a lot of sweet central, that's kind of where I'm trying to juggle with the Guardians roster. There's a lot of divisional play in September, which means they have a lot of White Sox and Royals coming up. So I kind of am, but really on the cheap. Really on the cheap.
It's a hard week too because they're facing Houston in Cleveland. The first part of the week they're getting JP France, Framber Valdez.
No, they're at Houston. They're at Houston.
Oh, sorry, yeah, they're at Houston, and they're facing JP France, Framber Valdez, and Christian Javier. So not a really good start to the week. If you're in NFBC type of format or Daily Moves type format, maybe you just want to use them for the back half because they're facing the White Sox at home. They're getting Clevenger, Kopech, and Jesse Schultens. So a pretty good back half of the week if you're looking kind of for a back half of the week streamer, but pretty rough first half of the week. I mean, I don't think anything's really changed with my thought process on Oscar Gonzalez. He just swings too damn much, especially out of the zone, to ever really be extremely fantasy viable. But what we did see last year from him, in his stint in the majors, is that he can outrun some of that those bad skills for a little while with good luck. And so if you want to take a bet that he can get some good luck here for the rest of the season, fine. But I just don't know that he's that.
Yeah, if you're like me, if you're one of those,
he will be again a popular pickup.
Taylor Ward, like if you just lost Taylor Ward and you're in an deep AL only league, this is one of the options you're going to have to consider.
Yeah. Speaking of the Cardinals, since we were just talking about the Cardinals pitching, the Cardinals are going to trade away a ton of players here over the next few days, or at least we expect them to, right? That may open up spots for minor leaguers coming up, and Maysn Winn has been on fire in AAA. He's sitting for power, speed, batting average. He could be their everyday shortstop sooner rather than later. Any interest in maybe stashing Maysn Winn in a league?
Yeah, I saw him. So we recorded last Sunday, and I went to the Charlotte Memphis game after we recorded at 5:00. Got to see Winn in person. So it looked good in field, looked good at the plate. And so, yeah, I would have interest because you said the magic word. They're going to be freeing up some playing time for some people. We mentioned DeYoung. He's been hitting at the bottom of the lineup, likely gone, and that creates a shortstop gap because DeYoung has been the starting shortstop in 5 of the last 6 games. That creates a spot for him to play unless they're going to go like, oh, hey, here's Taylor Motter. Oh, God, no. Taylor Motter has been the only guy that started shortstop when DeYoung hasn't. So, yes, they need to challenge the kid, put him up. That said, if you look at what this lineup is going to look like, I'm not sure that Winn has anywhere to hit but at the bottom of the lineup when he does come up, unless they are like, hey, Brendan Donovan, take a step aside. We're going to do a baptism by fire. Winn, lead off. Other than that, so he's either going to hit first or ninth. I don't know if there's any other room for him to hit because they said they're not trading Arenado. They're probably not going to trade. Look at the rest of the offense. Tyler O'Neill, and that maybe pushes Walker up and then allows Winn to move up. But I don't know what's going to happen with it. But that said, he should be getting regular playing time if he does get called up. So yes, I'm interested.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested. I think he is the guy that should be up sooner rather than later. There's power, there's speed. Though I don't know how well the power necessarily translates to the majors, especially right away. So I think he's more of a speed and batting average kind of guy. I do worry a little bit about the fact that he will likely hit at the bottom of the lineup, at least initially. But Winn's a very talented prospect. I know some of his prospect hype is kind of dampened over the last year or two. But he's still a guy who should be an impact guy as soon as he's up. So I think if you're looking for a stash, I think you can do much worse than Winn. Let's move into some pitchers. Let's start with Yimi Garcia. Jordan Romano has been struggling and dealing with a back issue since that All-Star break appearance. Yimi Garcia's gotten a couple saves in the meantime. Are you picking up Yimi Garcia?
So, again, I watched the only game that was on TV yesterday afternoon and got to see the back end of the bullpen without Romano, who is on the IL as he tries to deal with these back issues. So, of what I saw, Nate Pearson looked the best of this. Yimi Garcia came in, and now he came in after the game had kind of broken open, and he came in and worked 11 pitches. And Genesis Cabrera, I saw him pitch as well. But Pearson, to me, looked the best of all of them. And that's where I want to say things could go. If you need to have come in and get swing and miss, he's your guy. That said, Garcia's got more experience. And we know how these managers tend to tilt towards the experience. So, yes, I would not be aggressive on trying to get Garcia, but I would throw a speculative bid into that situation because they do have multiple options back there. And I know they can't really move him, but honestly, it's like when you look at a guy like Trevor Richards. I don't know if people have been paying attention to Trevor Richards and the amount of strikeouts he's getting, despite he's the anomaly in that bullpen. He doesn't have the big fastball that some of the other guys have. But that said, his strikeout rate, he struck out 13.7% or 37% of the batters he's faced this year, and it's because of that damn nasty changeup that he has, and he has just been dealing back there. And so I wonder if he's part of the rotation, part of that rotation. So I don't think it's going to be any one guy back there while Romano's out, which is why I wouldn't get too aggressive on anything because behaviorally, if you go back and look at the depth chart of what they've done around these different types of situations, Garcia has had the only save this particular week, but Swanson's had a couple, Pearson has had a couple. Cabrera's has the history with another club. So they do have options. The only option you could absolutely rule out is Mitch White. Really not sure why he's even on this club. And I know Jays fans listening are like, oh, yeah, please get rid of this bum. But they have options.
Yeah, I think it probably will be spread around. I also wouldn't be surprised if they went out and got someone at the deadline.
That's the one thing that's available is plenty of bullpen guys. You want to go get somebody. But as you even said last week, the only bullpen arms that are available are on bad teams, and there's a reason why these teams are bad.
Yeah, exactly. So I wouldn't get overly aggressive on Yimi Garcia, but I think if you need some short-term save help, maybe he could be a guy that gets a few saves if they don't make a move for someone at the deadline. What about Robert Suarez? I mean, the Padres gave him a big contract. It's in the off season to be kind of their setup guy. But the Padres are also likely to trade Josh Hader at the deadline, which would leave the ninth inning open for a guy like Robert Suarez. Are you going to the wire to grab him?
Yeah, I would have him in my waterfall bids. If they go, if San Diego does make the trade and moves Hader, I would want to get Suarez right now. I mean, he's not going to be dirt cheap because there are going to be people listening to this podcast doing things that be like, oh yeah, let me get ahead of this one. So he's not going to be dirt cheap this weekend, but he's going to be a lot cheaper this weekend than he will be next weekend. So yes, I would put him in my conditional bids if I'm trying to fill a bullpen spot. Like I said, with Romano, I happen to have both. If this was a mixed league, rather, but in AL, like I have Romano, and I have Romano, Swanson, and Pearson in AL labor. So I have a couple of bases covered. But if I was in a mixed league and I just lost Romano, this would be one of the guys I would have in my waterfall bid, along with Greg Santos. I mean, at least Greg Santos has the job now, and he may get 5 saves, but Suarez could get more than that if he gets the job here in the next 48 hours.
Yeah, I think that Suarez is a pretty good pickup for leagues where you need saves, because while the Padres are going to be sellers, they're not going to be atrocious. They're still going to, I mean, they're not going to trade any of their massive big bats. They've already said that they're not interested in trading away Juan Soto, or at least they don't seem to be. So like, this is still going to be a pretty good team that's going to get some wins down the stretch. So unlike maybe some of these other teams that we'll mention, as potential sellers, like they're not going to be bottom feeders because they sell at the deadline. So I think there'll be more save opportunities available for Suarez. So I think he's kind of my number one target in terms of looking for next man up for saves, who I might be trying to go after. Giovanny Gallegos could be the closer again in St. Louis if the Cardinals decide to trade Jordan Hicks and trade Ryan Helsley. There was some reports that Ryan Helsley could be traded at the deadline as well. And part of the report was that Helsley was upset about his usage or something, and then Helsley quote tweeted it on Twitter. I'm still calling it Twitter, saying, "Oh, I didn't know I felt this way." So, if would you be interested in taking a spec shot on Giovanny Gallegos, considering he's likely to be the next man up if both Helsley and Hicks are traded?
Yeah, kind of at the end of the bidding. They know what they have there, and this is a chance for them to look at another option. Really, it screams like the whole Jordan Hicks situation. Yeah, the Cardinals haven't won a lot of games, but Jordan Hicks hasn't pitched since Monday. Didn't pitch Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, nor yesterday. And it's like clear that they're holding him out for something to be traded. You would figure he'd come in and do something, but no, he has not pitched in 5 days. And so they are clearly keeping him in bubble wrap so they can move, they can do something, because the whatever talks there was for extension are gone. And he is going to be able to move. So yeah, but honestly, I would like to see them try something else. And see what if they potentially have another option. But that said, I don't know what else they have. So it may be, okay, it's your job, kid. Again, have fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's probably a little bit lower on my totem pole because I don't know that they trade Helsley. I think Helsley, I mean, I don't know why I think they've got Helsley under a contract for another couple years. So I'm going to double check that as I talk. And so, like, I understand there was a report that they're looking. Yeah, he's not Helsley's not a free agent until 2026. So, and he's just going to enter arbitration first time this off season. So, I can't imagine they trade Helsley unless they're getting a ton back. A guy who's on the IL, with a forearm issue. Like, what are you really getting for him at the deadline? So I think this one is probably, Gallegos may be in my waterfall bid, but like super, super low, maybe $1 or something like that towards the end is kind of a backup if I don't get a guy like Robert Suarez. I think I'd rather have Yimi Garcia than Gallegos.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Last guy on the docket is Steven Matz, who's pitched really, really well since returning to the rotation. Still pretty widely available in a lot of formats. And he gets a really nice start versus the Rockies at home. The Rockies are going to be sellers as well. I don't think Matz is going to get moved necessarily because of his contract, unless the Cardinals want to eat kind of a lot of the remaining money. So I think this is a pretty good stream that you can hold on your team for a while, even in 10 and 12 team leagues. Are you picking up Steven Matz?
Yeah. He's been tweaking around. I saw a note from Jeff Zimmerman about, he's moved away. Jeff's notes say that Matz has moved away from his curveball and throwing more changeups. And that makes sense. The curveball is garbage and you get more swings and misses on the changeups, then go with it. So yeah, I would, if I need to, let's say I was in a league where I'm not very confident in the good elbow pain from Nate Eovaldi, maybe I can take advantage of this nice matchup that Matz has and add him and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously I've been a big Matz guy for a few years. Obviously, I was also a year and a half. Yeah, I think I was a year and a half too early because I was big on him coming into last season. But yeah, if Matz is still available on your wire, you should be picking him up. He's been fantastic since returning to the rotation over his last 4 starts, sub-3 ERA. During that time, that defense behind him is still really, really good. So I think, yeah, Matz is a pretty easy pickup and stream this week, and then you kind of play matchups with him rest of the way. But I think he should be rostered in pretty much every format at this point. All right. That's going to wrap us up for this episode. Jason, want to remind everybody where you can be reached on social media and then plug anything you got going on.
So Collect Calls column is usually running on Fridays now. And I told you I wrote about injuries and what to expect, given that we have a few big names out right now, like Cedric Mullins with his second issue with his adductor groin, second one of his, Mike Trout, some different names, Starling Marte. So what to expect when those guys are coming back, that's out there. And then, if you're watching video, I put Linktree because I'm kind of, again, playing around in multiple places, been in Threads, been in Twitter is mostly, or whatever the hell you want to call it these days, has mostly been for me bitching about the Rays playing of late. So I'm doing mostly in game, but I'm not. So look on Linktree. You can just Linktree/Jason Collette. Real easy to find everything I'm doing. And then, that's it right now. I don't have anything else. Just trying to survive the day job. Back to school season. So a lot of people have technology needs in schools, and it's keeping me busy during the day, which is why you won't see me on any kind of trade deadline shows. I don't have time.
You will see me on a bunch of trade deadline shows. I'm going to be on Joe Rico's podcast. He's doing a live stream. I think I'm going to be on at the 4:00 hour on the East Coast. I will be joining Nick and Paul for their stream at some point, and then I'm going to try to join the Tout War stream at some point. So I'm going to be on a bunch of different live streams during the trade deadline, putting my kid in daycare for the day so I can focus on that. I'm writing 3 days a week over at Fantasy Pros, 5 days a week over at Fangraphs. And I'm doing this podcast, and eventually I'll be doing the Friends of Fantasy Benefits podcast. But unfortunately, Dave, my co-host over there, has been dealing with some technical issues and can't get his computer up and running at the moment. So hopefully,
kind of important.
Yeah, it's a necessity, unfortunately, for podcasting, unless you live near each other, and we don't. He lives in Cleveland, so that will wrap us up for this episode. For Jason and myself, thank you for listening. Have a fantastic baseball season.
Thanks, guys.